Hi, welcome to the Proactive Adventure Health and Wellness Podcast. Today, I'm honored to be here with author, New York, New Jersey Trail Conference donor advisor, trail guru, Don Weise. Don, thanks for coming in today.
Hey, Joe. Great to see you. How are you?
Likewise, I'm doing well. And yourself?
Very well, thank you. Trying to keep warm.
Well, thanks for being here, taking the time out on this Sunday morning to be here with us.
Pleasure's mine.
A lot of people are interested in having me talk to you, and I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite a while now. I want to get started by figuring out your background and how you got introduced to the trails and hiking and running.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm lucky because my parents, they both came from Chicago, city dwellers. And when they moved out to New Jersey, they really wanted to embrace nature. They weren't athletes or anything like that, but they got us out as kids and instilled this love of nature. We also went out to Lake Michigan, the western shores of Lake Michigan, and we found incredible nature on the Niagara Escarpment out there. Nobody really thinks of Wisconsin as an amazing hiking and trail running destination, but it is. It's really awesome.
I wouldn't think of that. That's cool.
And so, when I got back from Wisconsin and loving all the trails there, I was trying to find some other kind of similar adventure. And the Delaware Water Gap really reminded me a lot of the coastal areas. So, with rocky shores. So I got into hiking kind of young, and then got into track and field, and then got talked into cross country, and met some really cool people. We would, race each other down ravines when the coach wasn't looking, and just really had a lot of fun out there. Fast forward to like senior year in high school, I started to have major injury problems, especially my hips were hurting. And the doctors said, you've got arthritis, and, you'll never run again. And, you should sit down. This is years ago.
Yeah.
So they finally told me I could hike. That was a safe activity. So I tried to use that as a way to stay in shape and climb hills and things like that. And it eventually led me back to running and hiking. So it's been a journey, but hiking has built up the strength around my joints so that I can, at age 61, I can still trail run and hike and all that. And so I'm just really grateful to the trails for all they've given.
For sure. After the doctors told you that you'd never run again, and you were dealing with those injuries, after you started hiking and all that, the injuries cleared up?
Yeah, absolutely. I could hike without pain, and I could even dabble with running.
It's amazing. So how did you find your way into the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference? What's your background before, and how did you find your way into that organization?
Well, as part of hiking, I had just fairly recently come back from working over in Europe and had done a lot of hiking over there. And I guess before and after, I had come across a book called Circuit Hikes in Northern New Jersey by an author named Bruce Schofield. And he was singing the praises of this organization and basically saying, look, most of us don't get it, don't realize it, but it's not our taxes that are paying for all these trails, or very little is. It's the people who support this great organization, people who volunteer, and the people who donate to the organization allow us to have these trails and maintain them, keep them alive over time. So I got involved at age like 28. I became, I think, their youngest life member. And then eventually joined committees and the board, and did a bunch of volunteer stuff, maintained trails, donated. But I always wanted to join the organization. I was working in corporate sales and sales management and that, and just hanging out with guys in polyester suits who didn't really like the outdoors that much wasn't my gig.
Yeah.
So I kept talking to the executive director and saying, hey, look, I could help you guys. And he said, well, you don't really have a non-profit background. Get some nonprofit experience, and then we'll talk. And sent him a business plan. He eventually called me back in 2011 and said, I've got a job for you and you're not going to like it.
What job was that?
I said, I'm sure I'm going to love it. What won't I love about it? He said, the pay. So said, I want you to join our team, help us do some fundraising because we're trying to preserve an old building that's going to be our headquarters. And so I did that. Had a lot of fun doing it, and 6, 7 months later, the development director left the organization for other pastures, and so they said, why don't you take over? And that's pretty much how it happened.
Pretty amazing how, when sometimes some people won't think you'll appreciate the pay, when it's work that you're passionate about, it doesn't make that much of a difference and you fall into it, and
Yeah,
it gives you more purpose.
just being around all the people who really love the outdoors is, you know, there's nothing better. So,
For sure, for sure. Now, can you tell me a little bit about what the Trail Conference does exactly?
so that's a big old topic.
Sure it is.
So the main part, and what most people know the Trail Conference for, is that they build, maintain, and protect a network of very far-flung trails, about 2,150 miles of trails, mostly foot trails, but also some multi-use trails throughout the region. And by the region, I mean down to about Route 78 in New Jersey, Hunterdon County area, up north, all the way through northern New Jersey, through the Hudson Valley, Harriman, out to the Schwangunks region, up through the Catskills and beyond. So we have some long distance trails. We're the caretakers of the Appalachian Trail, the Long Path, which leads from Manhattan to almost the foothills of the Adirondacks, working on that, and a bunch of other long distance trails, Highlands Trail, Schwangunk Ridge Trail, Lenape Trail, and so forth. So that's kind of the bread and butter of what the organization has always done. And they do that by recruiting, supporting, training a network of 2,000, I think it's 2,500 volunteers now.
That's amazing.
Which is a huge job, and it saves a lot of money to use volunteers, but it also costs money to recruit and train them and all that too. So, but they're the only way that the organization would be able to do this. Now, other parts of what the organization does, people know Trail Conference maps. Bill Bryson sang the praises of them in his book. I remember that. And
Best maps around.
yeah,
They really are.
Jeremy Apgar from Northern New Jersey is the cartographer since the beginning of time, and he's amazing. So, and the maps are on Avenza, so you can get them on your phone and have the flashing blue dots so you don't get lost, all that type of thing. Now, other things that people don't necessarily know the Trail Conference for are saving land. The Schwangunk Ridge is part of this massive chain, a mountain chain that goes from almost Virginia up through Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and it's got the Appalachian Trail following it. It's called Blue Ridge, Kittatinny Ridge, different names.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets to High Point, New Jersey, the Appalachian Trail makes this hard right toward Greenwood Lake, New York, and then the rest of the ridge continues on. Well, that ridge was completely unprotected. The northernmost sections, like the Mohonk Preserve and some places like that, were preserved, but the whole rest of the ridge is really in an endangered status. So that's been one of the big project areas, is preserving over the last 30 years the Schwangunk Ridge. And so the Trail Conference with partners has been responsible for the creation of more than a dozen different parks. And so when we talk about less traveled trails, that's some of the places we might talk about. And then also preserving the West Hudson Greenway, which is basically the Highlands Trail, from Hunterdon County up through the Hudson Highlands to Cornwall on Hudson, and now continuing toward the Connecticut state line. So saving land, that's another big one. Making maps, we talked about. And another one is really getting involved in protecting the landscape, the land that surrounds the trails, protecting it from overuse, protecting it from ATV damage to the extent we can, and also removing harmful invasive species, because those are really threatening not only the look of the forest, but the biodiversity and carrying capacity of these lands.
For sure.
So we work with New York State particularly because they have some funding to do that work. And we use conservation dogs to sniff out the invasives. They do a much better job than we can.
I was just going to mention that. I see the dog. I see the dog doing the work sometimes there.
So they find what we miss, and they're super effective. And we do things like tree health, trying to find ash trees that are still surviving, so we can capture the genetic material and seeds from them, from successful ones. And that's the crux of what we do.
That's quite a bit of work that you guys are doing. I mean, it's amazing what a large territory gets covered by the trail conference, and just the different things you guys jump into is really amazing. And I'm very well aware that my group couldn't exist without all the work that the trail conference puts in, because that's our playground is everywhere you guys take care of and build. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the biggest events we do, we call Guardians of the Highlands, and it starts at Bear Mountain, and it goes about between 15 and 20 miles, over west to Dunderberg, and usually winds back up at Bear. And I did that hike last July, and it was the day before the storm hit Bear Mountain.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm happy that I got the last licks in all throughout Bear Mountain. But can you tell me a little bit about what happened out there that day? Because I didn't even realize it was closed until the day after.
Yeah, it was a wild situation. And for most of us in New Jersey and the Hudson Valley, that storm wasn't that big a deal. It's part of the same storm that destroyed northern Vermont. But one piece of that storm, for some reason, blew across Harriman into the Bear Mountain area. And it just stayed there for 12 plus hours and kept raining. And I don't know why or how that happened, but the destruction is just unimaginable. If you go to places like Bear Mountain State Park, especially, the Doodletown area and north of the Ramapo-Dunderberg Trail, Cornell Mine Trail doesn't exist anymore. It's just phenomenal to see what's happened there. So that's what happened. And now we're at the stage of where we've assessed the damage for the park. The park owns the land. We just take care of the trails, and then they dictate, what we can do to repair them. So with that work done, we were also able to cut a lot of blowdowns out of the way, which they didn't ask us to do, but they didn't object when we did. What we really want to do is rebuild those trails, and that's going to be a big, huge job. It's even too big for us, so we're going to be bringing in some private contractors to help with that. But we're waiting to pull the trigger until the park gives us the okay. We're hoping that's going to happen in springtime. I know a meeting is set between our executive director, Josh Howard, and PIPSI, Palisades Interstate Park Commission, which runs the land. So we should have more guidance, in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that's good to know. It's good. At least you guys had eyes on it and are able to see what happened over there. It really was amazing. I was hiking in Northern Green the next day, or the same day when the storm was hitting, and it was bad, but I didn't realize what was going on around me in other areas nearby, because Northern didn't get hit as bad as obviously Bear Mountain did.
Right.
With that said, are there other projects that you guys have down the tube right now that you guys are looking to get started on?
Yeah, I mean there's so much. If you look all around the region. One of the things that's been happening in recent years, do you guys you go to Morris County, you go to New Jersey as well?
Absolutely, all over the place. Yep.
Kind of start over there. So we take care of all the state parks in northern New Jersey, but some of the county parks, especially in Morris County, have been an outlier because they have their own kind of park service that does trail work. But even for them, it's getting to be too much. So they've asked us to work in areas like Schoolies Mountain, Tripod Rock area, Pyramid Mountain. We've been working in those places for a long time. And now they're asking us to work in Kinnelon at Silas Condict Park. And we just recently adopted the trails in Malin Dickerson. So I know Malin Dickerson has some serious issues and bridges that are out. So we'll be tackling those pretty soon. In the northern highlands of New Jersey, we're going to be working over on the State Line Trail, finishing up the State Line Trail rebuild project. Beautiful place, get to Surprise Lake,
Right.
overlooks West Pond. That's a cool area.
Just over there yesterday.
All right.
Yep, yep.
Nice. So that's going on. Um, Trying to think. Oh yeah, over the other side of my town. I live in West Milford, which is like it's like the Asheville of it's the place to be, the jumping off point for so many hikes.
Oh yeah.
But over in the Burnt Meadow area, which is Northern Green, Long Pond Ironworks area, um, over there we've got a lot going on with the trails, and we're working with Jorba, the Jersey Off-Road Bike Association, on some multi-use single track trails in that area. So you'll see some new things, a trail called the Tapawingo Trail, leading to the Lake Sonoma area, a lot of work in that area. And that's got a really cool history. Speaking of Northern Green, Northern Green was a park. Some of the oldest trails in the whole area were built there in the 19th century, meaning,
Wow.
late 1880s and 90s. So really old legacy trails there. A lot of the trails were built on private land.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Northern Green became a state forest, there were still huge areas, trail areas that were unprotected. And this is why land protection is so important. We thought we had the land locked up on the north end, Saddle Mountain area up by the Pine Paddies, if you know that region. That was a really popular hiking area in the 90s. And then a quarry came in and um, outbid the organization and land trusts and such. And so they knocked down all the trees, closed off the land, and we lost a ton of trails there.
Mm-hmm.
So having the northern section of Northern Green has been a godsend because it's created a whole new area to build trails.
I feel like Northern Green's a little underrated over there. That it's definitely more rugged, and it feels like you're deeper in the wilderness in most places than I think people would expect.
Yeah, and it's got the bare rock on the summits, so you get wide open views. One of
Oh
the
yeah.
one of the problems with Morris County, beautiful trails, but no views or very few. So when you get up north of Route 23, that's when things start to really pop out.
Oh, for sure.
Um, yeah, and then in New York, lots and lots of different projects underway. We're trying to improve the user experience over at Minnewaska, working in Gertrude's Nose at Sam's Point, um, improving the long path along its entire length, big improvements to the Appalachian Trail, which was impacted by storms,
Mm-hmm.
and extending the Highlands Trail across the Hudson toward Connecticut. So we'll have a real four-state trail soon,
That's one that's on my list. I'd like to try that whole thing one day.
definitely.
Is there anything you could share about Breakneck?
Yeah, so Breakneck, we've been hearing that Breakneck would be closed for a long time now. That's finally coming to pass. The Breakneck Connector Trail, which is going to connect the Whistle Stop and parking area just north of Cold Spring. It'll connect it to the new Fjord Trail. That project is going to close the Breakneck Ridge Trailhead and the Wilkinson Trailhead coming up probably this spring. Maybe it'll get delayed till later in the year, but it will probably close it for as long as 2 years. We expect the Wilkinson Trail is going to open up quicker, and you can still access the trail from other places. The Washburn Trail going up and Undercliff trails, those go up to Bull Hill, or you can go around to the north to the Notch Trail further north on 9D to access some of the trails.
Okay, so we still have a little bit of time with Breakneck then.
Yeah, a little bit of time. It hasn't closed yet.
Good, good, good. I am interested to see what that winds up becoming. The Ford Trail is it's an interesting concept, so I'm definitely looking forward to what it turns into.
Yeah, it's got a lot of controversy around it.
Certainly does.
Um, I mean, it's going to manage traffic. It's going to provide alternatives for people who don't want to go climb up Breakneck Ridge. Part of the reason that we have trail stewards at the foot of Breakneck Ridge is to stop unprepared people from attempting to do it. Also, the Ninum Trail has been built to provide an alternative for those who can't scramble up rocks. But also there's fear that it will bring more people to the area, and so we'll see how it plays out.
Yep, there's always that possibility.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned the Nimham Trail. I just climbed up the Nimham Trail the first time ever because I usually go down there if we're doing loops or repeats, and
Yeah.
we did Beacon Bully, which is our 20-mile hike, throughout that whole range. And in my mind, we thought it would be a little, easier going up those stairs. But at mile 19, when you're climbing up all those stairs, it's an interesting experience.
Sounds like a serious hike.
It's a big one. It's one of our bigger ones. Yep. Yep.
Awesome.
Do you have any favorite trails?
Well, I've got a few out there. I have a little bit of a bias because I'm looking out at my back window. We look across Pine Cliff Lake, which is at the foot of Bearfort Mountain. And Bearfort Mountain is, it starts way down by Route 80 at Picatinny Arsenal, and it goes all the way up and eventually becomes Scunnamunk Mountain up in New York, the highest point in Orange County. But Bearfort is just this wild ridge. It's probably the second highest mountain ridge in New Jersey after, Kittatinny High Point area. But it's wild. It's only recently gotten a trail that overlooks the lake where I am now on the east side of the ridge. But I've seen porcupine there. I've seen, bobcats.
Ooh, really?
I got hissed out of a trail at one point by a bobcat. I was seen, coyotes up there. You see coyotes, and certainly lots and lots of black bear.
Oh yeah.
But it's a safe place to hike, just like any other wilderness area. But it feels so much wilder. It's got Terrace Pond, Surprise Lake, and then the other really underappreciated area is the Newark-Pequannock watershed area, which is farther south on the ridge. It's still in West Milford, but you need a permit to hike there. A permit is going to set you back, a full year permit to the Newark watershed is going to set you back as much as a 1-day permit at the Mohonk Preserve.
Oh, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, $15, something like that. And then you can really have trails all to yourself. Beautiful lakes and reservoirs in there. So I love that area a lot. And then New York favorite is south of Sam's Point are several state parks and forests. There is Schwangunk Ridge State Forest, which connects to Rusa Gap, which connects to Wurtsboro Ridge. We're working on a land preservation project in Wurtsboro right now, or just south of it by Route 17. That area is so uncrowded and so beautiful, great views of the Neversink River, and great rock formations, similar to what you'd see at Sam's Point, and not crowded, no fees, just go and have fun.
Those sound like some of the trails less traveled that you wanted to talk about.
For sure, yeah.
You have a few more you want to share? Some of these places that aren't as popular or crowded?
Sure, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start?
Let's see. Why don't we work our way up? So if you start in New Jersey, and then we'll work our way up a little bit.
Sounds good. All right. Let me just jump over here. So I talked to you a little bit about the Newark watershed. I would also suggest checking out the watershed lands in Ringwood. Many of you might be familiar with the Stonetown Circular Trail.
Oh, yes.
So that's a great almost 10-mile loop that feels like about 15.
Yep.
And the eastern side of that trail has fantastic views overlooking Wanacue Reservoir. That's also the route of the Highlands Trail. And I definitely would recommend doing a Highlands Trail hike through that area. In fact, I would suggest, if you want something that's a really epic adventure, start on Route 23 by Cannisteer Road, which is way up at the western corner of West Milford, up 23 before you cross into Sussex County. You can pick up the Highlands Trail through there, hike it all through the Newark watershed lands, and then through Northern Green State Forest, and then beautiful connectors to the Stonetown Circular Trail area. And you can hike it all the way to Long Pond Iron Works, or you can bail out at Burnt Meadow Road. And it's just nonstop beauty.
Oh, yeah.
and you hardly see anybody there.
Love that.
Other, excuse me, other places I'd suggest are, Waiweanda State Park. Most people go to the lake, which is fine, the Waiweanda Lake, but there are other ways to access the park from Clinton Road and from Cherry Ridge Road. And that'll get you really deep into the especially the southern part of Waiweanda bordering Newark watershed lands. Fantastic stuff. And you'll also find, if you're a trail runner, you're going to find a lot of great trail running trails, lots of swamps and lakes and things like that. And there's a network of mountain biking trails as well that really get you deep in.
Waiweanda holds personal. I have a personal connection with that. My father used to bring me fishing all the time there, and I always say like that walk when I was younger, when I was little, that walk just from the parking lot around the lake and possibly to the ponds in sort of in the forest felt like they were forever walks because I was little, And now I do it, and I'm like, oh, it's just right around the bend there. But I love that place.
Isn't it great in wintertime too?
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah. You get snow up there, so it's one of those places that's not that steep, but it's high up. It reminds me of Black Rock Forest, which they call the rooftop of the Highlands. Waiweanda is kind of the New Jersey's rooftop of the Highlands. So you've got the higher elevation and cooler temps that allow evergreens to grow and cedar trees. There's a great cedar swamp in there, rhododendrons, but it's not that hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Some other places, I mentioned Northern Northern Green, that whole Burnt Meadow, Long Hill, Northern Northern Green, Long Pond Ironworks area is definitely a less traveled trails area with a lot of new trails that you might not have seen before or that didn't show up on old maps. Also in that vicinity, a lot of people from Bergen County are looking for places to hike that aren't so jam-packed. Ramapo Reservation, obviously is dog walker heaven.
Oh yeah.
If you get deeper in, that's great. I really suggest going through by way of Ringwood. The Botanical Gardens parking lot C is a good jumping off point to get to some of the less traveled trails. And it's this network. You've got Ringwood State Park, Ramapo Reservation, all interconnecting. And then you've also got several camps and Ramapo State Forest. So it's just this massive area to check out. Not quite as spectacular view-wise as Barefoot Mountain, but still beautiful. I tell people to check out Campgaw Reservation, which is where the ski area is for more moderate hikes. It's phenomenal how much less crowded it is. So yeah, that's kind of like that northern New Jersey section. Talk a little bit about the northwestern borderlands. I call the state line, the New Jersey-New York state line is I call it the borderlands because it's got a huge number of state parks on the New Jersey side, and then you've got parks like Sterling Forest and Harriman on the other side. But the northwest part of New Jersey, Stokes State Forest is beautiful and doesn't get as much traffic as places like High Point or Mount Tammany on the Delaware Water Gap side.
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's usually pretty quiet over there.
Yeah. And there's an awesome 18-mile or 17-mile loop trail called the Blue Mountain Loop. A lot of trail races are starting to discover that area too. The Wallkill River area, this is more, flat and wetlands areas. Sparta Glen is a nice short little hike in that vicinity. And then let's see, Jenny Jump State Forest, which is along Route 80 on the way to the Delaware Water Gap. Those are all some pretty good, less traveled areas in Northwest Jersey.
It's funny you mentioned Stokes. Stokes was where I think I did my first double-digit hike years ago, and I felt amazing after that, seeing what I was capable of. But Stokes was a good place to do it because a lot of it isn't that hard it's not high elevation or really too rugged. It was a good walk.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of forestry work going on there. Tillman Ravine is also close by on the south end of the park. And I'll just share just to the south of Stokes, people often go to Buttermilk Falls, which is, a popular tall waterfall. But just to the north of it, about 2/10 of a mile north on the road that leads to Buttermilk Falls, is a teeny tiny parking lot that holds like one, maybe two cars. And there's a small unmarked trail you can take from there to Hidden Falls. They also call it Silver Spray Falls. And nobody ever goes there. So
I have not been there. That's something I got to check out.
yeah, just go to Buttermilk Falls and then backtrack toward Walpack Center about 2/10 of a mile and keep a sharp eye out for a place to pull your car in.
Small
And
parking lot.
it's right there. Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't even call it a parking lot, but it's a pull in.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of New Jersey. As far as New York goes, I think about the Catskills and how popular they've become. I think when I did my 35 peaks there, I finished in like 2006 and I was number 1644. And it's like there are 10 times as many hikers.
Oh, for sure.
1640. Yeah, I was at 1,644th to do it, and now there's like 10,000. So, but if you can avoid the high peaks, an author named Alan Villa wrote a book about the 100 peaks under 3,500 feet in the Catskills. And that's a really cool book to check out. As part of that, I'd also suggest going out west, Western Catskills, Willowee State Wild Forest, and then south of the Catskills, I mentioned Wurtsboro, Schwangunk Ridge, Rusa Gap. Those are all on the SRT, the Schwangunk Ridge Trail.
Yep.
As is the Bashak Hill. Bashak Hill is a really beautiful wetland area and river wetland area. That's also part of the SRT. And then the Northeast Catskills, those are just always going to be popular, but they're incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd encourage you to check out the Long Path through that area, which passes through all the popular stuff. Burroughs Range, Devil's Path, Escarpment Trail, those are all along the Long Path. But if you really want to find something less traveled, explore north of the Blue Line, the Catskill Blue Line. And that's where the Long Path really heads into some wild country.
Okay. I like that.
So hopefully that gives you a start.
I think that's why I called you a trail guru, because you have those trails up here.
Over time.
Speaking of which, what gave you the inspiration to write Circuit Hikes in Harriman?
Well, the first book that I mentioned by Bruce Schofield, I thought that was a great concept for a book, hikes that you can do if you're all by yourself and have one car or that type of thing. And so I looked at what was out there for Harriman, and there were books that covered the Hudson Valley that had a few circuit hikes in Harriman. And there's a great book by Daniel Chazen and Bill Miles called Harriman Trails. But that's kind of like the Encyclopedia Britannica of hikes. It shows each trail start to finish with a description, and it's alphabetized. So great, no pictures really, just the basics. So I wanted to get something that people could find and do, say 35, 40 different hikes in Harriman, because there's that many to do, that are all circuits. And then I thought, wow, this is a great trail running area too. And also a place where you can find trails that aren't so difficult for walkers. So I added chapters at the end that are suitable for trail running, that are suitable for easier walks. There's a mountain biking path in there. So that was the idea.
Gotcha. And that was released in 2015, right? The original.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So now it's in its third printing, and probably due for another one soon.
It's about time, probably, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have the book right here, so I'll put that up on the screen when we get this thing done. I wanted to ask some simple questions of you, really. Any advice you can give people that are interested in getting out for maybe their first run or first hike, and are just a little trepidatious to do so?
All right, so let's take them kind of separately, because I think that people who are starting their first hikes might be in a little different category. And I really would encourage you to you get guidebooks, go go on the internet, get the maps. Definitely if you're looking at a specific area, get the trail conference maps, because they are, I use all trails when I'm not in the New York, New Jersey area. And it's a little scary sometimes. They take me to places I don't, private lands, or they miss
I agree.
trails, all kinds of different things. So get the trail conference maps to start with. Get them on your phone if you can. Get the Avenza version, because that way, if you get off trail, you can easily watch your blue dot and see if you're getting closer or farther away from the trail that you just wandered off of.
Yep.
That's a real game changer. And then just the basics, things you probably tell your folks all the time. Bring the important stuff. Bring a headlamp. Start your hike early and end early, well before sunset. Pack extra layers. Wear layers during colder weather of wicking fabrics, not cotton. Bring a space blanket. Bring an emergency kit. Just the basic stuff. Make sure you've got proper footwear. All those types of things, and then go have fun. As far as trail running is concerned, trail running is like, it's something you can ease into. I know when I was hiking and I wanted to get back into trail running, I would just kind of run sections, run the flats, run the easy downhills, that type of thing, and stay within your heart rate zone. So that means when you start to feel a little out of breath, that's when you walk. There's no harm or shame in walking, and make it fun. Trail running is a fantastic way to see more, to scout out something if you want to lead a hike, and if you run, going to trails is such a natural progression, because nobody thinks it's strange to run, right? Hardly anybody.
Yeah.
But if you run on roads, it's very boring. But taking it to the trails is just, it's magical. It's fantastic. And it's also a little bit of an adrenaline rush,
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Not as much as the mountain bikers. I think the mountain bikers, I'm in awe of some of their insanity.
I absolutely. Sometimes I run into them in certain spots. I'm like, how'd you get up here?
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
I was talking to a group of trail runners and mountain bikers together for a talk, and it was odd to get those two groups together. And I said, since I've got you together, I want you guys to like separate out, trail runners here, hikers here.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you have gotten an injury that's serious enough to take you out of your sport for at least a month in the last year? And so 2 out of 10 hands went up from the trail runners. 8 out of 10 hands went up from the mountain bikers. So
That checks out. That makes sense. You run trail conference runs. Is that a group that you run?
that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I have 2 groups. One is a hiking group, and we call ourselves the West Milford 13ers. And that's a group that hikes all over the Hudson Highlands region. But that's the hiking group. And then Trail Conference Trail Runs is also a group that gets together once a month. And yeah, we have 2 different pace groups. And we also rove all over the Hudson Valley and northern New Jersey. Yeah.
That's cool.
Keep it going through the winter.
That's the funny thing. A lot of people will ask me about my group too. I'm sure that you probably get the same question. Like they act like the season's over once it hits like, October. They're like, so what are you going to do all winter? It's like, we're going to keep doing what we do all year round.
And it's really funny. You get a totally different crowd in the wintertime. You get the people who say, oh, I hate poison ivy. I hate ticks. I hate hot, humid weather. For a January hike, we had to cut it off. There were too many people. And it was freezing cold.
It's unbelievable. I get the same thing told, the people always say, like, things probably slow down in the winter. I'm like, no, it's just a whole different crop of people. It's like a shift change. And then they come in for their season, and then the other people come in for the summer. It's amazing.
And I'm sure you tell your people they have to, bring traction devices, that type of thing.
Oh, for sure. I do remember when I had started hiking, I went out, I think I went to Bald Mountain before I even realized what traction devices were. And I had an interesting day. It taught me quite the lesson to really, and then when I finally put the spikes on, I felt like Spider-Man, because I was like, this is really cool. I have special powers. I can just walk up this ice now,
Yeah.
So with all that said, and with the work that gets done by the Trail Conference, I would like you to share what can people do to support the work of the Trail Conference? Because we've been talking about all these trails, and a lot of what we're talking about is the work of the Trail Conference.
Yeah, and that's a really timely topic right now. If you think about the organization and its history, it started 103 years ago. Actually, on the top of the Abercrombie and Fitch building in Manhattan, there was it was a sporting goods store, and on the roof of the Abercrombie and Fitch building, they had lean-tos. So
Really?
Benton Mackay, the father of the Appalachian Trail, um, a couple of different hiking clubs, and then the people who became the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference all met to form this organization. And it was originally about building trails across Harriman and building what would become the Appalachian Trail. Um, anyway, so it started with a lot of volunteers building trails across Harriman, doing it on volunteer power, sometimes not so well, but the organization grew from there, and is maintaining a huge network of trails. It's gotten to be a huge job to keep them viable. The best thing that people can do to help the organization nowadays is to volunteer and to support the organization financially. And the reason I say support it financially is because of things like what's been happening in the last 20 years on the trails. For one, hiking and trail running and all trail related sports have just exploded. And the impact of all those feet is something that the founding fathers of the trails, mothers and fathers, could never have foreseen. Often the trails were built straight up the mountain, which was fine when 15 people hike on a trail during a year.
Yeah.
But when 15,000 hike on the trail per year, it's a different game. Add to that the extreme climate changes that we've been having. We can all see just how extreme the rainstorms are, just the water damage alone that's occurring.
Oh yeah.
What this has done is changed the whole dynamic of keeping the trail system viable. These trails, and we can see it happening in the Adirondacks on an even more extreme level already. Trails in the Adirondacks are trashed, really trashed. And now they're trying to figure out how to find the money and the people to do that work. We're at the point where we can still do something about this, but the organization was able to squeak by with a couple of percent of the hiking community actually giving back to the trails. So like 2-3% of the people actually being members, major givers, volunteers. Those days are over. What we really need is we need to take bold and decisive action now. In recent years, the Trail Conference has increased its volunteer force. We now have 2,500 people volunteering on the trails. And not only that, they're better trained than they've ever been. So they're able to do, not all of them, but many of them are able to do things like putting in bridges, stone steps where the erosion is just too severe for switchbacks, building switchbacks, and building the trails in a sustainable manner. I don't want to get too deep into this, but like I've been building trails in Sterling Forest, and what they actually have done is they dig out 6 to 9 inches down into the ground, remove all the rocks, put them on to one side, put all the topsoil, bury it in a safe place, break up the rocks, use that to under armor the trail, and then put in compacting clay-like soil on the top, plus erosion control cuts to create the trail. It's a huge job. It's very time consuming. It's very expensive compared to regular trail building.
Yeah.
But you get trails that are built to withstand modern day stresses and last for 50 years with regular maintenance. And that's the key to keeping our trail system viable, because the ugly truth is that New York, and especially New Jersey, are not going to provide the funding to keep the network alive the way that we want it to be alive. We'd love to see it not only maintain it's 2,150 miles, but maybe grow a little bit and
Yeah.
be able to keep them viable. So it's really crucial that we all, if we enjoy the trails, if we derive benefit from the trails, that we give back to the trails, and they can do that by supporting the trail conference. So it's kind of my mission right now, is to make sure that these trails stick around for the rest of our lifetimes.
Yeah, I hope so. And I'll post a link so people can find the information that they need to be able to donate and to get involved. For sure.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. If everybody gave just at the minimum $40 level per year, we'd be in great shape. But I'd love to see us get 20%.
Oh, I'm sure.
That would be amazing.
I got my trail conference. I don't know if you could see that on the screen. I got my trail conference membership right here. So I'm a member. But I would love to see more people give. That'd be great.
Thanks for getting the word out too. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, a lot of people that are hikers and runners just, they don't quite realize where the trails come from. So I'm glad you're shining some light on the work that gets done, and your description of building those, the sustainable trails. It's a lot of work. That is a lot of work. No easy task.
Yeah, it really is, and it's so worth it. It's talking about Bear Mountain. Now, Bear Mountain itself, the mountain within Bear Mountain State Park, is one of those areas that was just about at the epicenter of the greatest damage. The greatest damage actually occurred just a tiny bit north of there in West Point. That's where the rain fell the heaviest.
Yeah.
Now, trails farther south, like Cornell Mine, Suffern Bear Mountain Trail, 1777 Trail, those were just kind of wiped off the map. The reason that Bear Mountain, which got even more rain, isn't completely wiped off the map is because it was built bulletproof 10 years ago. And, we're seeing, there are some places that are kind of damaged, but it's not anything like, with those trails are going to be fine eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really worth the effort. It takes much more time and much more money than we've ever had to come up with before. But it's about the survival of the trails.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there anything else you want to share with everybody? Everybody listening?
Yeah, just get out, have fun. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my work email address. It's dweise@nynjtc.org. And be glad to help answer any questions that I can.
Great. And can they find you on social media, Don?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. And we have the two groups are private Facebook groups. We use Facebook because they're good for setting up events. So the one is called West Milford 13ers Hiking Club 13ERS. Just ask to join. And if you're a trail runner, trail conference, trail runs.
Awesome. And we'll get those links posted up here as well so they can find you on there. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Don.
Really great. And thanks for all you're doing to bring people out on the trails, Joe.
My pleasure. And what are you going to do today after you get done with this now?
I think we're going to go and climb Bearfort Mountain.
Sounds great. I was there yesterday. It's nice and snowy. You definitely enjoy it.
Yeah, it looks pretty white up there still. So.
That's right.
All right, Joe. Thank you so much.
Take care, Don. Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening, and I want to thank Don again for joining us on a Sunday morning, the first episode we've done remotely. Check out his book, Circuit Heights and Harriman. You can find us at Proactive AHW, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube. I'm Joe. That's Jarod, and that's it.